Hey everybody, happy Monday to you guys. Coming to you live from my Sunday school room today. Since we have discipleship now this weekend and got about a million things going on at work, I decided that it'd be easier on my day to come at you from here at the Sunday school room. So if my location is throwing you off, I apologize for that, but we're going to get this rolling, and it's going to be a good devotional today. So if you would, turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 8, verses 5 through 13. So it starts off, it says, "When he entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, pleading with him, 'Lord, my servant is lying at home paralyzed and in terrible agony.' He," the he being Jesus, "said to him, 'Am I to come and heal him?' 'Lord,' the centurion replied, 'I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, having soldiers under my command. I say to this one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it.' Hearing this, Jesus was amazed, and he said to those following him, 'Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with so great a faith. I tell you, many will come from the east and west to share the banquet with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But sons of the kingdom will be thrown into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.' Then Jesus told the centurion, 'Go, as you have believed, let it be done for you.' And his servant was healed at that very moment." So when you look at this, and you look at the context, you see that Jesus rolls into town and he has this centurion come up to him. And for those of you who aren't familiar with they are basically like lieutenant generals in the Roman government. So what they would do, the Caesar would appoint the centurions, and the centurions were in charge of 100 soldiers. So they're basically mini generals is what they are. So this guy has a problem with his servant, and his servant is in some agony. He's in need of some healing. So he goes to Jesus and he says, "Hey, I know that you're this guy that's healing everybody. So do you think that you could heal my servant?" And I kind of like the way Jesus responds. He's like, "Well, am I going to go and am I going to take care of this?" And the soldier's like, "No." He says, "I know who you are. I sense your authority. I've seen you work. And all you have to do is say the word, and it's going to heal my servant." And then probably my favorite verse out of these verses comes up. It's in verse 10, and it says, "Jesus was amazed by this." And then he turns to his disciples and he says, I've never seen anyone in Israel have this much faith. Israel being God's chosen people, the ones that he called out of the desert. And all of a sudden, Jesus is looking at this Roman, his sworn enemy, not his particular, but Israel's sworn enemy at this point. And he says, "I've never seen this kind of faith before." And the first point it brings me up to today, guys, is what kind of faith does it take to amaze Jesus? This word that is used, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. It's a big, long Greek word. It's about that long. And it basically translates to marveled. So Jesus looks at this guy, he sees his faith, and he's marveled by that faith. He's amazed by that faith. And it kind of got me curious because for those of you who don't know, the New Testament is written in Greek. And when the Greek is translated, there's some words that have a hard time, being translated into normal English, so they kind of do the best they can. Anyone who knows anything about trying to translate a foreign language, there's some things that are lost in translation. So when you look at this big, long Greek word that's basically the same amount, the same definition as marveled in the English language, it's only used 4 times in the New Testament. Twice are the 2 Gospels that are explaining this story. Once in Mark 15:44, it says Pilate was amazed when he found out that Jesus was dead. And then it's also in Luke 11:38, and it's talking about a Pharisee who was just absolutely shocked and blindsided by the way that Jesus was conducting himself. Even though Jesus never did anything wrong, the Pharisees had all kinds of problems with Jesus. So basically what you see is you have 4 occasions of people that were marveled, that were amazed, that were blindsided. And you see Jesus and you see his encounter with this guy's faith, and he was absolutely blindsided by the amount of faith that this guy had. And it just kind of relates to me today. When you think about us, when you think about what our reflection is, when you think about how we show our light to other people, are we amazing Jesus with what we're doing? Are we making Jesus look at us and marvel with what we're doing? And if not, guys, it's kind of gut check time, and it's kind of time to figure out how we can take the next step and how we can amaze Jesus. And when you look at it, the most simple equation that this guy did was he put his faith forward, and he led with his faith, and he said, God, I have so much faith in you that you don't have to come where I am to perform this miracle for me. I know that you're strong enough to do it from where you are. And when you think about, when we ask Jesus for things, do we ask in faith, or are we asking and kind of in the back of our mind like, well, I know this isn't going to happen, I just want to ask to keep up appearances, and when you think about that, which way is going to amaze Jesus? If you're asking him to do something knowing full well that he's going to do it, if it's what is in his will, then that's kind of how we need to live. That's kind of how we need to step forward and start amazing Jesus. The second point I took away from this, quite simply, is to love your enemies. So when you look at what Christianity actually is, it's being a reflection of God's love for us. And the best way we can do that is to mirror how Jesus lived when he was on earth. So the term Christian, it talks in Acts about how they were first called Christians at Antioch. And the point there being, in this place, Antioch, where they were preaching, that's when they first got the name Christians, and it's carried on till today, basically. And when you look at that term as it was used in Acts, it was actually an insult, and they would use it to make fun of Christians. I tell my youth group this all the time, but the term Christian literally translates to little Christ. So what they were doing was they were saying, like, look at all these little Jesuses running around preaching their gospel, and what they didn't know was that term of insult that they used was actually a great name because it describes exactly what Christianity is supposed to be. We're supposed to be direct reflections of Jesus. And why that stands out in this particular passage are, I don't know if you know much about the New Testament history, and not looking down on anyone who does, because it's very, or who doesn't, excuse me, it's very expansive. But basically at this point, the Romans are in control of the Israelites, which are God's chosen people. So the Jewish people are under the oppression of the Romans and basically have to do whatever the Romans say. So you have this centurion, and he comes up to Jesus, and the fact that he does it in broad daylight and he's like showing a sign for Jesus' authority, that's a big step of faith on this guy's part. And you look at Jesus, who responds to what he's saying. In the traditional sense, if Jesus was, a Jewish person who was acting under the Roman rule, it was not easy to help those people out and to do what they were asking, because it's akin to basically like a slave owner going up to a slave and being like, hey, I have this authority, but I need to ask your help about something. How reluctant is that person going to be to help them out? And when you look at it from that perspective, the Romans having taken over the Jews, and all of a sudden he's asking Jesus for help, and there's not even a sense of hesitation on Jesus' part. He helps this guy out. And to take it to today's times, this is a very, very extreme example, but when we're faced with our enemies, when we're faced with people that we don't like, or people that we just, choose to not associate with, and they need our help, how are we going to respond? What's our answer going to be? And when you look at it from Jesus' perspective, he helped this guy out. And if we're reflections of Jesus, if our enemies need our help, we're to help them out. And the third thing that I wanted to bring up today is we need to examine ourselves. So when Jesus is talking to this centurion and he's talking about this man's faith, he goes on and he says, look, a lot of people are going to, celebrate with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, but sons of the kingdom being the kingdom of Israel, some of those people are going to miss out. Some of those people are going to go where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth, which is how the Bible describes hell sometimes. So the idea is there's a lot of people that think they're okay, that think they're set in their relationship with God, that have this made up in their minds that, oh, I'm fine, I'm a good person, I'm going to make it on my own accord, everything's cool. But they haven't taken that step. They haven't done what the centurion did and put their faith in Jesus. And there's a lot of people, guys, who think that they're going to make it, but aren't on the right track. And be that as morbid as it is, but It's the way of the world. The Bible in Matthew chapter 20, verse 16, it says, the first will be last and the last will be first. Many will be called, but few are chosen. And when you think about that, when you look at it from the perspective of the call is out for everyone, but only a few people are going to accept it, guys. So when you look at it from that perspective, and you look at it from the perspective that Jesus is saying, look, there are people that think they're going to make it that aren't going to make it. It should be inspiring to us. It should kind of light a fire under us to make us say, okay, I need to make my relationship with Christ the best that it's been and the best that it's going to be. So that's my challenge this week, guys, is to kind of examine yourselves, examine your relationship with Jesus, examine if you have even taken that first initial step to have that relationship with Jesus. And if not, let's get on correcting that, because that's first and foremost. Then the secondly, love your enemies. And thirdly, live your faith in a way that would amaze Jesus. All right, guys, be in prayer this week. I have Disciple Now this weekend. I'm staying at a house with about 5 teenage boys, so pray for my sanity, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.